Welcome to this Union Talk recap episode. Rosa Parks is one of the pillars of the civil rights movement and the subject of millions of Black History Month school reports every year. And yet, as you will learn in this recap episode, what we know about Parks barely scratches the surface of her life, one devoted to the fight for justice right up until her death. In today's recap episode, we go back to an incredible conversation Randi had with journalist and host Soledad O'Brien as the two discuss her new documentary, The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks, the first documentary ever about the civil rights icon. If you like what you hear in this episode, you can listen to the entire conversation by going to aft.org/Union Talk and search Finding the Real Rosa Parks with Soledad O'Brien, which is the episode this conversation is from. So, without further ado, let's dive into this dialogue.
One of the things I really respected about what you did in the doc is you also kind of peeked behind the curtain about how women were treated, even in the movement. And how Rosa Parks, who was this, just as heroic as anyone could be, in some ways undermined or valued because she was female, not male. And how have you gotten any responses or reactions because of that? Because it was pretty, I thought it was pretty brave of you to do that as a through line through the movie as well.
Yeah, I think it's just a fact. And I think there have been lots of people who've been working on projects talking about all the women who've been left out of the civil rights story. I mean, if you looked at any civil rights stories or civil rights documentaries in the past, you would literally think the women were in the background serving people coffee, and making sure that everybody ate because they were kind of, again, left out of the narrative. Yeah. And so, no, I think we're at a time when filmmakers generally are trying to insert people back in the narrative. There's a great piece in the doc where at the March on Washington, someone refers to Rosa Parks and she just basically does this and waves, it's ridiculous. But I think that's how a lot of women were treated in the movement. But I think in this current day, lots of people are working to insert, real stories back in. And there are so many documentaries, not only just about the civil rights movement, but across the board about people who are, you never heard of this person, but they were there, they existed, and here's what they did. And again, it's why I like doc work and why I like history and why I like facts to really understand, who's being written out and why.
Well, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about the effects of this moment on, kids, on families, on teachers, and, the both the challenge, and I would actually say the opportunity, but the challenge that this era presents and this iteration of a culture war. If you look back in, the history of education, there are all these moments where people who are fearful want to just stop knowledge from happening. And they say others are indoctrinating people, but those who are trying to stop knowledge from happening, that don't want to see the good, the bad, the ugly, they're just trying to stop. But we have always won out as educators, helped by filmmakers like you in telling the story of struggle, survival, success. And so I would actually just ask you, as we end this podcast, give some advice to those of us who are trying to teach honest history and to have the backs of those who teach honest history. Give us some advice or some cheerleading as we end this podcast and end Black History Month this year.
people say the truth will set you free. And I truly believe that. I think also young people are really interested and smart and want to understand history. And history is messy and history is complicated and history is sometimes doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's such a great way to educate students to have real conversations about things that are complex. So, my mom was a teacher, so I fully understand when it feels like, a lot of things are against you and you're, and it's a challenging time because, in some ways, I think teachers are at the center of a lot of political debates and have been over the past decades. But I really think that for, one, teachers are really, really important and your students are not as naive. I remember we had a book ban when I was in elementary school. The first thing we all did was run out and get those books as fast
Exactly.
as possible. On our book ban list was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which of course I read multiple times and now is being made into a movie. So, they're not really successful. And part of that is because the truth does come out. And I think, students are not fragile. And I don't think that they are worried about being blamed for something that happened historically. I think that they should know. They should learn about their history and they should understand their history and they'll be better for it. So I think for educators, this is a really important opportunity to stand up.
Thanks for listening to this Union Talk recap episode. To listen to the full episode, head to aft.org/Union Talk.